We have with us live in via Zoom this morning to speak a little more about the demise of Pa Edwin Clark and what we would miss without his presence and what he has always stood for. A legal practitioner and a public affairs analyst, Professor Ritchard Wokocha. Professor Ritchard, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right, how did you receive the news of the death of Pa Edwin Clark?
Well, with mixed feeling because at his age, he was still a very active man, and he was still doing a lot for which he was still relevant nationwide. But on the other hand, at 97, it's supposed to be a glorious homegoing. So for me, as a human being, conscious of the fact that we are not immortal, he has done very well, and he stayed as long as we should be rejoicing that he stayed that long. But as a Niger Deltan or as a Nigerian, who knows that the country is in a state that, despite his struggles for decades, we are still in a situation where he still had to talk and he still had to struggle up to the very end. He left one sad that we have lost that voice and that input to the national development.
What specifically do you think that Nigerians would miss, or even the Niger Delta region would miss with his absence?
Well, if you look at the history of the Niger Delta region in the last, let's say, 2-3 decades, you will find that his was a very prominent voice, and his contribution as a voice from the Niger Delta has helped the country stabilizing oil production and the oil economy. You remember that Pa Clark was largely behind the amnesty program, and he was a strong voice that encouraged the federal government to engage those who were angry enough to engage in struggle. And at the end of the day, he has remained a voice that intervened each time there were threats from national policies threatening the Niger Delta area, or creating situations that could constitute a threat to the national economy or the nation's development. So Clark was a man whose appeal could calm angry nerves within the region. Now without Clark, we are going to engage with those young angry minds, and I just hope this does not turn out terribly for the nation. The government will have to learn to listen to voices other than voices like that of Edwin Clark, to which it listened before now, for us to be able to sustain the peace that is in the region and build on the nation's economy.
Done a lot when it comes to advocating and, in fact, also speaking largely about what has been going on with exploration. It's so sad that we have lost him at this time. But I also wanted to ask you, do you think that there is any other person who can stand in his stead, giving voice to some of these issues that the Niger Delta has been facing? We spoke about he's loud on resource control. He's also loud on the pollution in the Niger Delta. He's also loud on equity and fair play, in the distribution of resources in Nigeria. But right now, it does look like, if you look at the Niger Delta region, there isn't anybody who you could point to and to say this person can stand in the stead, who can also do the same thing and maybe bring to the fore what the Niger Delta people are facing in that regard.
You will not find anybody within the region to find anybody who will stand in his shoes. He was such a father figure, given his age and his participation in these affairs, both resource control, as you said, resource control, environmental sanity within the region, tackling the strong, or at least the voice that they will respect, that will cause them to make effort to remediate the environment and things of that nature, and then the amnesty program and the rest of them. So you cannot find a father figure of that nature right now in the Niger Delta. Um, we still have a few voices, but they are not voices at that level. Maybe men like Ledu Mite and a few others. Politics has made a mess of the region. At the moment, maybe older men like the Spiff, former governor of Rivers State, and such other people may need to get more active for us to be able to find father figures that can intervene for the region. At the moment, there is no gainsaying the fact that this is a monumental loss to the Niger Delta, but we should have seen it coming. A man at 97 cannot live forever. So we just have to get on with what we have left and finding a way to play the role that Edwin Clark played for the region.
How much of those things that he mentioned that you see that the federal government is actually largely addressing?
Well, not very much, because we are in a country where it's been difficult for government to address critical issues. But at least the amnesty program uh, kept running and kept angry youths away from the pipelines and from engaging government in battles. So you have criminal activities, but as many will tell you, the criminal activities are not expressions of Niger Delta discontent. The practitioners and the illegal bunkering and all that are largely not Niger Delta people and youths. As experience has shown, it's been largely people from other areas and other sectors who have the capacity to muster the security required for what they are doing. It's been largely those ones, including sometimes, as some have alleged, military officers posted into the region and those who are not in the region. It's been largely those ones that are very active in those areas. So yes, by Edwin's intervention and government reaction has at least sustained the amnesty program and kept angry youths away from rebellion that they had before now. On environment, there is no doubt that the environment has continued to suffer, but at least few remediation efforts have been made. The war the military has been fighting now against illegal bunkering is keeping soot away from the sky, even though it's not necessarily a war against the Niger Delta, because as I said, the practitioners in that sector are
Hello, Wokocha. Can you hear me? Okay.
largely not Niger Delta in anger to the federal government. It's more on resource control, on issues like resource control. He has done his bit. Where we stand now is a product of his campaigns, and that we need to go beyond where we stand. It's a fact that the entire nation must admit, because you can't be a federation and have policies, fiscal policies that are not federal in character. And so we need to carry on that struggle and push that one on until the nation realizes that to be a successful federation, you have to cede powers to the federating units for them to economically be active and viable. That way, their growth will signify a larger growth for the entire nation. So there is still a lot of work to be done, but what has been done so far has benefited from Clark's intervention.
All right. How do you think that Pa Edwin Clark should be immortalized? Because again, that particular issue would also come up in the different fora. How do you think that, you know, giving his status, giving his standing, giving what he has contributed to his community, the humanity, and of course across Nigeria and Africa, how do you think is the best way to immortalize a man of that caliber?
I will individually say immortalization is a thing of the mind. Stones and statues will fall. Government policies will change and change the name of institutions. What we usually do in this country is usual thing will be done. But I think that the best thing that would have been done is to engage a government policy that solves part of the problems that Edwin Clark has been fighting for. And then maybe you name that law after Edwin Clark, and we will know that so long as the policy endures, that this was something that resulted from the struggles and efforts of Pa Edwin Clark. That for me would be a better way to immortalize him, something that reaches all and that speaks in perpetuity, and not just naming an institution, which the next government can come and rename with these powers that are vested in it by the Constitution. So for me, implement some policy that are solutions to the problems he struggled for, and that at least up to last week, he issued statements. Do something about some of those things, name the policy after him. We will remember him for that, better than naming an airport or a road after him, which is our usual culture in Nigeria.
Okay, so given those issues that you've raised, can you specify them? Can you be specific about the immortalization of the elder statesman?
Well, let's look at it. You already itemized the areas in which his struggles can be identified.
Yeah.
We talked of cost control. So what if we engage in some reforms in that sector that gives greater voice and greater fiscal capacity to the states? And we name that law Edwin Clark law. That will be something. It will just be addressed in Niger Delta. It will address all states of the Federation, and it will be national relevance, so long as those fiscal opportunities and capacities are enjoyed by the states. I will appreciate something like that. I don't know if right now government can do anything on the environmental side, but if you could also name such law. So you choose any of those policies that Edwin Clark championed and spoke for across the years, and make a national law that addresses that problem and that solves that problem. Let me it after him. That for me is a greater way of immortalizing him than naming an airport or something.
All right. If you look at him, some persons in different quarters would say that he is more of a regional champion rather than a Nigerian champion. If you look at also in other spheres, you would also see the same thing happen in different regions. You see regional champions, people who are revered because of what they were able to project as to the sentiments of that region that they live in. And so many other persons also think that he is not a pan-Nigerian. He was more like a pan-Niger Delta, more about what's happening in the Niger Delta. Do you think going forward, we should start looking at people who are more about the Nigerian project than a regional project?
Well, it will be funny if it's taken that way. But of course, I understand the perspective from which this question is coming. I personally hold the opinion that you don't have a pan-Nigerian until you have somebody who expresses deep appreciation and deep concerns over his environment. Clark served the nation when he could at the center as a minister, and after then he has been a voice that consistently contributed towards the drive for equity in Nigeria. Equity for Nigeria is not equity for Niger Delta alone. So when you struggle for policies of justice as he did, we are not struggling for a region. We are saying have national policies that gives expression to the regions, to the federating units. You can't have a Nigerian without that Nigerian coming from a region. And this idea of our creating a pan-Nigerian who has no place of origin does not make sense. Look around the world. Great men come from somewhere. It is because their environments have gone beyond these policies that are skewed towards specific regions, that they are able to speak at national level, and they are able to focus entirely on that. You can't be a nationalist and keep quiet about the death of your people and what is destroying your people. And when you call for something to be done about it, you are trying to preserve the nation. So criticism, constructive criticism, does not become criticism. It becomes an act of love that is designed to help you preserve the nation and to preserve the peace in the nation. such activity from any such regional champion. It's a national activity because the nation cannot hold together unless equity is done and justice is done to all regions. So a man who speaks for equity, a man who speaks for federating units is not a regional champion for me. He is a major national figure. We need to redefine some of our senses and ideas about these terms that we use. You can't have a pan-Nigerian who is not relevant to the environment in which he lives, whether he comes from that place or from another region. It must begin from home.
Yes, I share in a few of the things that you have said, but then again, I mean, over the years, we've seen how these projections of regions and the sentiments therein also cause chaos. If you look at the elections, it's more of the divided country than even a unified, country. You know, when people project more of what they can gain from a Nigerian project because of the resources that they have, the other people would also feel bad that, well, because we don't have that resources, and then you're projecting that, and we would have a little of it. You know, so it goes back and forth in practically everything. These days, you would ask a Nigerian, where is from? He tells you he is from a place before being a Nigerian. So it somewhat causes problem, even when you talk about having people project the Nigerian project as a Nigerian. People want to, tell themselves that they are from a certain place first before they are Nigerian. Don't you think that that's a problem, projecting more of ethnicity than the unified Nigeria?
I think it's not. I think it's not. Something brought forward this ethnic tendency. With a sense of history, you will realize that in First Republic, that was not the problem. In First Republic, where the regions exercised reasonable autonomy and paid 50% tax to the national government from resources within their area of control, there was no agitation, there was no cry for marginalization and the rest of it. No, all regions were busy. Problem began when we adopted unitary policies for a federal state. Naturally, the problem began from that moment when the military government of Agui Ironsi, after the coup, unified Nigeria and put all resources together at the center, where the center will now be distributing things to the regions. That's when we became conscious of how many mouths we have in the region, who are eating from it. You go and eat in your own region and all that. What we have will not be enough for us. It wasn't like that in the First Republic. So that problem you are seeing is not a product of individual will. It is the result of the unitary policies we have adopted as a federal state. It is a natural consequence of that. If you take back those powers that were removed from concurrent list and transferred to exclusive list by the military, if you take them back to the concurrent list, I can assure you that all regions, all states will be busy. There is no state that is bereft of a natural resource. All the 36 states have natural resources. Give them the capacity to exploit them and to live on what they produce. You will marvel at what you will see, because we roar back as an active and effective federation.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Wokocha, for your insights. It's truly, truly appreciated. I mean, it's one discussion that I'd love to continue with you, but it would be on another date. Many thanks for your time. I truly appreciate it.
Great pleasure. Thanks for the privilege.
Save Nature TV. News in your pocket.